My name is Hannah Pierce. I'm 32 years old and I live in Cleveland, Ohio. I didn't grow up abused. I grew up unwanted. And that difference is harder to explain, because when people hear abuse, they imagine shouting, bruises, police reports. But being unwanted? That's quieter. It's birthdays that feel rushed. It's hugs that don't last. It's praise that sounds forced. And in my house, there was always one clear truth. My sister Claire was chosen, and I was tolerated. The first time I understood it fully, I was 8 years old. It was raining outside. Claire had just come home from a soccer game. She'd scored 1 goal. My mother had balloons in the kitchen. Balloons. For 1 goal. I stood there holding a spelling test I'd aced. 100%. Red star in the corner. I waited. And waited. And when I finally showed my mother, she smiled briefly and said, "That's nice, Hannah. Go put it in your folder." Claire's goal stayed on the fridge for 2 weeks. My spelling test never touched it. That was the night I learned something dangerous. Love in my house was earned, and I didn't qualify. Before I continue, if stories about family secrets and quiet strength mean something to you, subscribe. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? I read more of them than you think. Claire Pierce was everything my mother wanted. Outgoing, confident, beautiful in the way that makes teachers soften their tone. She laughed loudly. She cried loudly. She took up space. And my mother adored it. They shared clothes, shared secrets, shared long talks in the kitchen after I'd gone upstairs. When Claire messed up, which she did often, my mother explained it away. She's just strong-willed. She's passionate. She'll go far. When I messed up, I was difficult. I was dramatic. I was too sensitive. There's something deeply destabilizing about growing up in the same house as someone who gets a completely different version of your parent. Because you start questioning reality. Is she cruel? Or am I exaggerating? Claire never saw what I saw, because she was never on the receiving end of it. The locked drawer appeared when I was 10. Top right corner of my mother's dresser. Brass lock. Small. Intentional. I only asked about it once. "What's in there?" The reaction was immediate. Not anger. Not yelling. Fear. Real fear. She grabbed my wrist, tight enough to hurt, and said, "You don't touch that. Ever." Her eyes weren't angry. They were protective, like that drawer contained something alive. From that day forward, the rule was absolute. Don't ask, don't look, don't touch. And when something is forbidden that strongly, it becomes unforgettable. Claire got a car at 16. I got bus fare. Claire got a graduation party with catering and rented lights. I got a small dinner and a lecture about saving money. My father, Mark Pierce, wasn't cruel. He was quiet. He deferred to my mother on everything. When I once asked him why things felt different between us and Claire, he said, "You know how your mom is." That sentence followed me for years. Because what does that even mean? You know how she is. Does that mean unfair? Resentful? Disappointed? Or does it mean I was imagining it? Gaslighting doesn't always come in dramatic speeches. Sometimes it comes in quiet dismissal. I was 14 when I heard something I wasn't meant to hear. My mother was on the phone in her bedroom. I was walking past the door when I caught a sentence. I did what I had to do. Pause. No, he doesn't know. Pause. Neither of them do. Neither of them. I froze. Then she lowered her voice and I couldn't hear the rest. But something shifted that day. Because children sense secrets the way animals sense storms. And that drawer suddenly felt connected. I left home at 18 with a scholarship and 2 suitcases. My mother hugged Claire at the door when she left for her local college. She shook my hand when I left for mine. I remember that detail clearly. A handshake. like I was a business partner, not her daughter. I didn't come home often. Part of me hoped absence would make her miss me. It didn't. Claire moved back in after graduation. I built a life elsewhere. Marketing firm, long hours, quiet apartment. I learned to be independent because I had no other option. And the strange thing about independence, once you develop it, you stop begging. 3 years ago, my father had a heart attack in the driveway, gone before the ambulance arrived. I drove back to Cleveland in a fog. At the hospital, my mother collapsed into Claire's arms, not mine. At the funeral, Claire stood beside her. I stood slightly behind, and when the condolences came, people said, "You girls must be devastated." Girls. Plural. But even in grief, I felt singular. Isolated. After the funeral, while sorting paperwork, I noticed something odd. My father's files were organized, but certain folders were missing. Financial statements, old tax returns. And when I asked my mother about them, she said, "I'll handle it." That tone again. Closed door. End of discussion. 6 months after Dad died, my mother slipped on the kitchen tile and fractured her wrist. Claire called me. "Mom needs help." I almost didn't go, but something in me still wanted. I don't know. Validation maybe. So I packed a bag and drove back to the house I never quite belonged in. My mother didn't thank me. She just handed me a list. Medications, appointments, groceries. I did everything quietly, like always. And on the third day, everything changed. On the third afternoon of staying at my mother's house, I was in her bedroom looking for her blood pressure medication. Her room hadn't changed in 20 years. Lavender lotion on the dresser, framed wedding photo of her and Dad. Claire's senior portrait, large. Mine, smaller, tucked behind a lamp. And then I saw it. The key. Small. Brass. Slightly worn. Sitting casually on her nightstand. Not hidden. Not guarded. Just there. For 22 years that drawer had been untouchable. And now the key was exposed. I stood there longer than I should have. My heart wasn't racing. That's the strange part. It felt inevitable. Like I had been walking toward this moment since I was 10 years old. From the kitchen I heard my mother's voice. "Hannah? What's taking so long?" I picked up the key, and something inside me went quiet. The drawer was heavier than I expected. The lock clicked with a soft metallic sound. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. It was just a small, final sound. Inside was a manila folder. Neatly stacked documents. Organized, preserved. Waiting. My hands didn't shake, but when I opened the folder and saw the title page, my lungs forgot how to work. Confidential adoption. Record name, Hannah Marie. Adopted by Janice Pierce. Date, 2 months after birth. My brain rejected it immediately. This is wrong. This is someone else. This is paperwork error. But then I saw something worse. There was no adoption document for Claire. Only for me. Beneath the adoption paperwork was a paternity acknowledgement form. The biological father listed, Daniel Rourke, not Mark Pierce, not the man who tucked me in at night, not the man whose last name I carried, a different name, and below it, my mother's signature, signed willingly, not forced, not accidental, intentional. And that's when a new thought entered my mind. My father might not have known. There was one more document in the folder, a letter, written in my mother's handwriting. Not sentimental, not emotional. It read like strategy. It mentioned public image. It mentioned stability. It mentioned not destroying what we've built. And then one line stopped my heartbeat. Claire must never find out the circumstances. Circumstances. What circumstances? The letter wasn't dated clearly, but it was old. Old enough that the ink had slightly faded. I reread it 3 times. Not because I didn't understand it. because I did. And I didn't want to. That night, I didn't sleep. I replayed my entire childhood like surveillance footage. Why was Claire favored? Why did I always feel like a guest? Why did my father sometimes look at me like he wanted to say something but didn't? Then I remembered something small. When I was 12, I needed my birth certificate for a school program. My mother handed it to me quickly. Too quickly. I didn't notice then. But now I did. Because the hospital listed wasn't in Cleveland, it was in Columbus. 2 hours away. Why would I have been born there? The next morning, I made an excuse to stop by my father's old office. He used to keep copies of financial records in a filing cabinet. Most of it had already been sorted after his death. But I found something unexpected. Recurring transfers. Small. Monthly. Labeled only with initials, DR. The dates went back nearly 20 years. The account receiving the transfers? My mother's personal savings. Not their joint account. Her private one. Daniel Rourke, DR. The realization was slow and devastating. He hadn't disappeared. He had been paying. Quietly. Consistently. And my mother had been accepting it. I didn't confront her. Instead, I drove back to Cleveland and called a private investigator recommended by a colleague. His name was Marcus Hale, former detective, professional, discreet. I gave him one name, Daniel Rourke, and one question: is he still alive? Marcus called me back 2 days later. Yes. Pause. He lives in Columbus. Pause. He's been employed at the same manufacturing company for 18 years. Stable. Ordinary. Present. Which meant something else was true. He had chosen distance. Or he had been pushed into it. 2 weeks later, I drove to Columbus. I didn't tell anyone. Not Claire. Not my mother. I just needed to see him. Daniel Rourke was not what I expected. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't arrogant. He looked tired. When I introduced myself, he froze. And in that moment, I knew something. He recognized my face, which meant he had seen pictures of me, which meant he had been thinking about me. He invited me inside. We sat at his kitchen table, and he said the sentence that fractured me in a new way. I wasn't allowed. Not I didn't want to. Not I disappeared. I wasn't allowed. He told me everything slowly. He and my mother had a relationship before she married Mark. She got pregnant. She panicked. Mark was stable. Mark was respectable. Mark was safe. Daniel wasn't. She told Daniel she'd handle it. She married Mark. She convinced him the baby was his. When Daniel found out the truth, she threatened legal action. Said she'd claim harassment. Said she'd ruin him. So he agreed to stay away. In exchange for financial contributions that weren't labeled child support, he sent money for years. And my mother accepted it. While raising me in a house where I was the mistake, I drove back to Cleveland with one overwhelming thought. My father might have lived and died believing I was biologically his, or worse, he might have known, and stayed. I needed proof. Because if he knew and stayed, then my childhood wasn't about being unwanted, it was about something darker, something controlled. The question wouldn't leave me alone. Did Mark Pierce know I wasn't biologically his? Or did he die believing a lie? Because the answer changed everything. If he didn't know, my mother deceived him for decades. If he did know, then why did he stay silent while I grew up feeling unwanted? I went back to his old office, the small den in the house that still smelled faintly like aftershave and printer ink. My mother hadn't cleared it yet. Claire didn't care about it. That room still felt like his. And for the first time in years, I closed the door behind me. My father had a small fireproof safe in the closet, combination lock. He once told me the code was my birthday. At the time, I thought that meant something sentimental. Now I wondered if it meant something else. I dialed the numbers slowly. Click. The door opened. Inside were old tax returns, insurance policies, and one sealed envelope. My name on it. Not Hannah, not Kiddo, just H. Pierce. My hands went cold, because my father was not a dramatic man. If he left something sealed, it mattered. I sat in his office chair before opening it. The paper was thick. The handwriting unmistakably his. He wrote, "If you are reading this, it means something I hoped wouldn't happen has." My pulse pounded. He continued, "I knew." Just 2 words. And suddenly the air felt different. He knew. He knew I wasn't biologically his. He wrote that he found out years after I was born. A paternity discrepancy during a medical insurance audit. He confronted my mother. She denied at first, then admitted it. He wrote, "I chose to stay, not because I was weak, but because you were mine." Mine. Not biologically, but emotionally. He wrote that Claire was biologically his, but that didn't change how he saw me. He said he tried to protect me from tension in the house. "But your mother carries guilt like resentment," he wrote. "And sometimes resentment finds the nearest target." I stopped reading for a minute, because suddenly my childhood reassembled itself. He knew. He stayed. But he didn't fight loud enough. And that silence had shaped everything. There was more inside the safe. Updated estate drafts. One version older, one version recent. In the older draft, both Claire and I were listed equally. In the newer draft, the percentages had shifted. Claire, 80%, Hannah, 20%. The amendment date, 6 months before his death. The signature, his. But something felt off. The ink tone was slightly different, the page formatting inconsistent. I had spent years in marketing contracts. You learn to spot subtle edits. This looked altered. And if it was altered, then my mother hadn't just hidden my adoption. She had manipulated inheritance. I contacted the estate attorney listed on the original will. His name was Thomas Ellery. Retired now, but still reachable. When I emailed him copies of the documents, he called me within hours. His first words, "That second draft isn't one I finalized." Silence filled the line. He said he drafted equal division documents. He never submitted the amended 80-20 version. He asked carefully, "Did someone provide that to you recently?" Yes. My mother had. She'd told Claire and me it was our father's final wish. Suddenly, something clicked into place. The locked drawer. The secret money. The altered will. My mother wasn't just protecting a story. She was protecting control. Claire still believed our mother. She still believed the narrative that I was dramatic. So I didn't confront her immediately, because truth isn't effective if delivered emotionally. It has to be timed, strategic, calm. I invited Claire for coffee. Neutral territory, public space, no shouting, just paper. When she sat down, she looked tired. She asked if Mom was doing okay. I said, "Did you know Dad wasn't my biological father?" Her face froze. Not angry, not defensive, confused. I slid the adoption papers across the table, then the letter from Dad, then the estate documents. And I waited. Claire read everything slowly. I watched her face change in stages: denial, shock, fear. Then something worse: guilt. Because golden children eventually realize something devastating. Their advantage wasn't accidental. It was engineered. She whispered, "Why wouldn't she tell us?" I didn't answer immediately. Then I said, "Because control only works when people don't compare notes." Claire's hands were shaking now. "Are you saying she forged Dad's signature?" "I'm saying it doesn't match the attorney's copy." Claire leaned back like the air had been knocked out of her. For the first time in our lives, we were sitting on the same side of the table. We met with the estate attorney together. He confirmed something serious. If the amended document wasn't properly filed through him, it could be invalid. But to prove forgery, We'd need handwriting analysis. Claire agreed immediately. That was the moment I knew something had shifted. Not because she chose me, but because she chose truth over comfort. If you've ever felt like the other child in your own home, let me know in the comments. And if you're still here, I appreciate you more than you realize. These stories aren't easy to tell. When my mother found out we were reviewing estate documents, her tone changed. Sharp. Controlled. She accused me of trying to tear the family apart. She said I was poisoning Claire. Same old script. But this time, Claire didn't echo it. She just asked, "Mom, why didn't you tell me about the adoption?" My mother didn't answer directly. She said, "It wasn't relevant." Not relevant. My existence wasn't relevant. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. The truth wasn't destroying our family. The truth was exposing who had been destroying it all along. The handwriting analyst took 2 weeks. 2 long, silent weeks where my mother acted normal. Too normal. She cooked dinner. She texted Claire heart emojis. She avoided eye contact with me. Control always looks calm until it feels threatened. When the report came back, Claire and I opened it together. Conclusion: the signature on the amended estate document shows high probability of simulated writing and inconsistent pressure patterns. It does not match authenticated samples of Mark Pierce's signature. Forgery. Not a mistake. Not confusion. Forgery. Claire stared at the page like it was radioactive, and then she whispered, "She changed Dad's will." Yes, she did. We weren't done, because while reviewing financial records, something else surfaced. The monthly transfers from Daniel Rourke had not stopped. Even after my father died. The payments continued. Same amount. Same frequency. Same hidden account. Claire's voice trembled when she saw it. "She's still taking money." Yes. And that meant something terrifying. This wasn't about protecting a past mistake. This was an active operation. Ongoing, calculated. We scheduled a formal meeting with a probate attorney in downtown Cleveland. Name: Rebecca Sloan. Direct, unemotional, sharp. We presented adoption papers, paternity acknowledgement, Daniel Rourke's transfer history, original estate draft, forged amendment, handwriting analysis. Rebecca leaned back and said calmly, "If this proceeds legally, your mother could face civil fraud claims and potentially criminal charges." Claire's face went pale, because this wasn't family drama anymore. This was prosecution territory. Rebecca asked one final question. "What do you want?" Not what can you prove. Not what should you do. What do you want? And that's when I realized something. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth on record. We didn't ambush her. We scheduled a family meeting. Sunday afternoon. Living room. Same couch where Claire used to sit curled into Mom's side. Only this time, we sat across from her. Claire spoke first. Her voice shook, but held. "We know about the will." My mother's face didn't move. Then I placed the handwriting report on the coffee table, then the bank transfer printouts, then Daniel's name, then the adoption file, paper by paper, layer by layer. No yelling, no accusations, just evidence. My mother's breathing changed. Not loudly, but noticeably. For the first time in my life, she looked cornered. She tried 3 tactics. First, denial. "I never forged anything." Second, deflection. "Your father wanted Claire protected." Third, attack. "This is Hannah's influence. She's always resented this family." Old script. Same tone. But something was different. Claire didn't side with her. Claire said, "Why didn't you just tell us the truth?" And that's when my mother snapped. "You don't understand what it cost me to keep this family intact." There it was. Not apology. Just justification. To her, manipulation was sacrifice. Rebecca Sloan had advised us to record the meeting, legal in Ohio with one-party consent. I had my phone recording in my bag. When my mother said, "I changed it because Claire deserves security," that was admission. When she said, "Daniel paid because it was easier than court," that was confirmation. When she said, "Mark didn't want the neighborhood to know," that was motive. She didn't realize it. But she had just dismantled her own defense. Calmly, in her own voice. After the meeting, Claire cried. Not loud, not dramatic. Just the quiet grief of someone who realizes their childhood was curated. She said, "I don't know who she is." And I said, "She's the same person she's always been. You just weren't standing where I was." Rebecca presented options: civil suit for fraud, probate challenge, settlement negotiation, criminal referral. Claire looked at me. For once, she didn't assume. She asked, "What do you want to do?" And for the first time in my life, I wasn't asking for permission. I said, "We give her one chance to fix it." We presented her with a written demand: restore equal estate division, return all improper transfers, post-death, disclose full financial records, sign a legal acknowledgement correcting the adoption concealment. If she refused, we proceed legally. She had 10 days. 10 days of silence. 10 days of tension. 10 days where control slipped through her fingers. On the 9th day, she called. Her voice was small. Controlled, but smaller. She agreed. Not because she felt guilty, because she realized we had proof. She signed the corrective estate filing. She returned funds from the hidden account. She closed the Daniel transfer arrangement, and she signed a notarized acknowledgement of adoption disclosure. No apology, just compliance, and that was enough. People think revenge is dramatic. It isn't. It's paperwork. It's evidence. It's quiet confidence. My mother didn't lose her house. She didn't go to jail, but she lost something much bigger. Control. Claire moved out permanently. I didn't move back in. We didn't become a perfect family, but something shifted. I wasn't the mistake anymore. I wasn't the afterthought. I was the truth. And the most powerful part? I never raised my voice. Not once. Because the calmest person in the room is usually the one holding the evidence. My mother chose my sister for years, but in the end, we both chose reality. And reality doesn't need to scream. It just needs to be revealed. Thank you for staying with me through this. There's another story already waiting on your screen. When you're ready, I'll see you there.